Welcome to the first session of Aitareya Upanishad study and discussion. We will go through the first three verses today. It explains the creation of the worlds, the Srishti. In the next slide, we have mentioned the references used to prepare this presentation. Some slides have the reference material as it is to keep the meaning also as it is. We want to disclose it is for learning purpose only. In the next slide, we have some choices of question for discussion. 1. What struck you about the story of sage Maheedasa? 2. What is your understanding of the universe starting with an intention? What does that say about the Atman? 3. Why do you think the Upanishad uses water to describe both the highest celestial realm and the foundation of the physical world? 4. The research question for follow-up. How does this version of creation compare to that in other religious texts, the world religions? So we will come back to this question after the presentation. And now, since we are starting this Upanishad first, we want to go through some introduction about Vedas and Upanishads. So first, we will go through some introduction to Vedas and Upanishads. So Vedas meaning knowledge, directly revealed to the rishis, and they are all preserved by oral tradition. They are called Shruti. So as we know, there are 4 Vedas. The oldest Rig Veda, then Yajur, Sama and Atharva. Though each Veda is one book, they are divided into 2 branches or signs. The first branch is called Veda Purva. It has 2 parts. The Karma Kanda, which explains the path of action. That commonly we say Karma Yoga. And then the second part, the Upasana Kanda, which explains the path of worship, the meditation, the bhakti aspect. Then the second branch of the Veda, which comes at the end, so it is called Vedanta, which explains the Jnana Kanda, the path of knowledge. This knowledge is knowledge of Brahman, not the worldly knowledge. Then each Veda also has 4 subdivisions, as you can see in the illustration on the side. The Samhitas, which has the mantras and prayers. Then the Aranyakas, which explains the rituals and sacrifices. Then Brahmanas, that has the commentaries on rituals and sacrifices. And finally, the Upanishads, which has spiritual knowledge portion, which we study in this Upanishads. So, around 108 Upanishads are known. They are all taken from the Vedas, of which the first 10 are the oldest and most important and are referred as principal Upanishads or Mukhya Upanishads. Those 10 Upanishads have been expounded on by Sri Adi Sankaracharya. So those are the 10 Upanishads we are studying. So now we went a little bit about Vedas. Now Upanishads. What are Upanishads? They are the last section of each Veda most of the time. They represent Brahma Vidya, knowledge of Brahman. They explain the existential questions like what is the world, who am I, why am I here, what becomes me after death. These questions are asked and answered in the Upanishads. Most of the Upanishads are student-teacher dialogue in question-answer format. The Upanishads translates as Upa means nearness, Ni means totality, Sat means to sit. So, the Upanishads translates as sitting near the Guru devotedly. By sitting nearby, the secret and sacred teachings are imparted to the disciple. So now, as you can see on the illustration, The Aitareya Upanishad comes from Rig Veda. Rig Veda is the oldest of all. The Aitareya Upanishad is the only one Upanishad which is taken from the 10 Upanishads. It comes from the Brahmana portion of the Rig Veda. Now we will go through the one-line summary of the 10 Mukhya Upanishads. So far we have studied up to 6 Upanishads and we are starting the 7th. So we will go through the first 6. One is Isha Upanishad, which explains karma without attachment. Then the Kena Upanishad details God exists behind natural process. Then Kata Upanishad explains immortality is simply union with God. The 4th Mandukya Upanishad explains the meaning of Om. The Prashna Upanishad is on discourse on prana. Then we just finished the Taittiriya Upanishad, which explains bliss is Brahman. We are starting the Aitareya, which explains the creation and pure consciousness. Then we have the Mundaka, Chandogya and Brihadaranya. So now we will go some about the Aitareya Upanishad, which we are starting today. Some introduction to Aitareya Upanishad. So most of the Upanishads we cannot find author, but this Upanishad which is coming from Rig Veda, it has an author and is Rishi Maheedasa Aitareya. So we will go through about how the Upanishad started and who is he. The Rishi Maheedasa Aitareya was the son of Brahmana named Vishala and a mother named Itara. The mother belonged to a humble community of potters. Because Itara was from lower community, she is the other wife, and her 5-year-old son was forbidden from sitting on his father's lap during the sacred Havan ceremony. Distressed by this rejection, the mother Itara prayed to goddess Earth. The goddess appeared and placed the boy upon a celestial throne, a seat far superior to any earthly father's lap. She did not merely elevate his status, she initiated him into divine wisdom, transforming the boy into a great rishi. Taking the name Maheedasa, which translates as servant of Mother Earth, the rishi remained rooted in his humble origin and turned his focus towards his own downtrodden community. So, this Upanishad is by a peasant for the peasant, because Maheedasa translated the highest truth of consciousness, the Atman, into a language and spirit that resonated with his sideline community. So, the Aitareya Upanishad remains as a spiritual teaching of the common man, by a common man, and for the common man. So, in this Upanishad, the author's name comes from his mother Itara. Itara is the name of Maheedasa's mother, so the name Aitareya meaning son of Itara, pointing to a metronymic lineage which is so unusual for that time. Now, the Aitareya Upanishad is, as we mentioned, one of the oldest and most vital Upanishads. It is short but profound text. It has 3 chapters that explores the creation of the universe, the nature of life, and the ultimate identity of the self. So, this Upanishad, as mentioned, from Rig Veda Brahmanas, it has 3 parts, 6 chapters, and 33 verses. So, the chapter 1 to 3 deal with the Karma Kanda, chapter 4 to 6 deal with the Jnana Kanda, the knowledge of the self, Atman. And Sri Sankaracharya considers the Shanti mantra of this chapter as so important and made it as a chapter 6. But usually most of the Upanishads start with Shanti mantra, but in here we are going to finish with Shanti mantra. So these 6 chapters together calls Atma Shatka. So now we are going to start with the verses. So there are many theories about creation. The purpose of all creation theories in the Upanishads is to point to the ultimate reality, the Brahman, beyond the unreality of the world. Here in this Upanishad, we have something more familiar to us, something we can all relate to. And with this, I'll hand over to Ranjini to take us to the verses. Add and
Thank you, Val. So just every time we start this a new Upanishad, like Val explained, we provide this overview again of the Upanishads. What are they? Where do they fit in to the Vedas and the Vedanta? And for some of you, this is the first Upanishad, and it's fine because each Upanishad, it is quite self-contained, and they all point to the same universal consciousness. So if you hear us use the word Brahman has been introduced to us in the early Upanishad as the ultimate consciousness, the source of all creation. And that's who we will be talking about here in the very first verse itself. Okay, so let's go to the very first verse of the Aitareya Upanishad. It says, Om Atma va idameka evagra asi na anyat kinchana mishat saikshata lokan nusrija iti. Let's take it word by word. So Om, as you know, is the sacred syllable representing the Brahman or the absolute consciousness. Atma in this verse is synonymous with that Brahman, that original pure consciousness. Va is indeed, idam, this, ekam is one, eva, alone, agre, in the beginning. So prior to creation, asit, existed. So Atma was the only one that existed prior to creation. Na anyat, not other, kinchana, whatsoever, mishat. Mishat is translated as like blinking or stirring or winking. Like not even a pinpoint of light was there before this. Saha, so he, the self, ikshata, he thought. Lokan, the worlds, nu, now, srijat, let me create, iti, thus. So when you put all these words together, what does that verse mean? Verily, this one Atman alone existed in the beginning, prior to all creation. Nothing else whatsoever that blinked. He thought, let me create the worlds. So very first introduction in the Aitareya Upanishad to how did creation happen. So this verse focuses with one very, very important point. It says creation, he thought, let me create the words. So creation arises with intention, the intention of that supreme consciousness. The verse focuses from what was created to the nature of the creator. It establishes a timeline of existence that begins even before time. So time and space are all dimensions of creation that have happened afterwards. This is before time. Before the universe manifested, there was only Atman or pure consciousness. There was no material, there was no matter, there was no duality, there was no movement, nothing but pure consciousness. What was the process of creation? Creation didn't begin with a physical act, but with an ikshana, a conscious glance or a thought. That was all that was needed. The Brahman, the Atman, projected his consciousness, and from his own consciousness arose the universe. So the self recognized its own potential and willed the manifestation of the lokas or the various planes of existence. And analogies that make it possible for us to understand this. So before pots, it was just clay. So before existence, it was just consciousness. You take gold. Before they're beaten into ornaments, it's just gold. So also with consciousness. Before the waves, you just had the oceans. So in the same way, before all this variety was created, there was just pure Atman. It is both the consciousness and the material from which creation was produced. Next verse. Sa iman lokan ashrajata amba marichi maram apo. Adombah parena divam dhyau pratishta. Antariksham marichya. Prithvi maro. Ya adhastat apah. Saha, he, the self or the Atman, Iman, Lokan, these worlds, Ashrajata, he created or he projected. And what was the order in which it was projected? Amba. Amba is the wall, it's described as either the celestial water or the world of water-bearing clouds. And so Swami Nikhilananda says, Yon is Amba above heaven. So the reason I go into this is to just explain that it actually takes a lot of research even to find the right translation of these Sanskrit words as they were used then. So, for example, to understand this idea of Amba, I think I had to look at about 5 different texts. Same thing with the word Mishat. It is described as blinking, stirring, winking. So what is the exact meaning so that we can understand it before people start bringing in their interpretations into it? So Amba is the celestial water or the water-bearing clouds. Marichi is the atmosphere. Now light starts to come in. Mara is the earth. Apa is the waters. Adaha, that. Amba. Parena, beyond Amba. Divam, the sky. Dhyau, the heaven. Pratishta, it's supported. So the sky formed the foundation for these heavens. Antariksham, the intermediate space. Maricha are the marichis. Prithvi, the earth. Maraha is the earth. Ya, those which. Adhastat, below. Taha apaha, they are the waters. So the meaning is he created all these worlds. And in brackets, we talk about 14 in number, and we'll explain in a little bit what that means. So he created all these worlds, and the order in which they were created was first the Amba, the Marich, the Maraha, and the Apa. And the meaning is far beyond. Yon is Amba, far beyond is Amba, the celestial waters or the water-bearing clouds. And where is this Amba? Just above the heaven, Swaha. With Swaha acting as a support, the heavens are supporting that layer called Amba. The sky is Marichi, interspace between heaven and earth that allows light. The earth is Maraha, Bhu, or the plane of death. And what lies below earth is Apaha, water representing the netherworlds. So if you know the Gayatri mantra, you know Bhur, Bhuvas, Swaha. Bhur, Bhuvaha, earth, Swaha, heavens. Beyond that is Amba. So notice the imagery that is created, right? On top is waters, on the bottom is water. In the middle, you've got the heavens, you've got the earth. So what is this? We've tried to break this down for you. Amba is the high waters, the highest celestial region. It is located beyond the sky, suggesting a causal plane of pure potential. Marichi, the light rays, intermediate space, the Antariksha. This is the realm of energy, vibration, and light. Mara, the mortal world, is the earth. Crucially, it is named Mara Mara from the root Mra, meaning to die, because it is the realm of time, change, and physical decay. So anything that is created on this earth is subject to the laws of nature, which is you're born, you grow, you die. There is physical decay. This body decays and dies. But as we've learned in some of the other Upanishads, and as it'll probably emphasize here again, the path that never dies is the Atman. Apa, the subterranean waters, the foundation of the netherworld that supports the physical structure from below. So you're supported by water both on top and below. This provides the structure of the universe. If verse 1 was the pure intention of consciousness, verse 2 is that projection. And Swami Guru Bhaktananda says that these 4 divisions, even though this only mentions 4, much later texts have introduced us to this notion of there are actually 14 lokas or 14 worlds, and that he has mapped to these 4 layers. So the 5, Ambha, are the 5 heavenly worlds: Swaha, Maha, Jaha, Tapaha, and Satya. Satya is Brahmaloka, highest heaven. Maricha is the interspatial world, Bhuvaha, which is between heaven and earth. Maraha is the earth, Bhu. And then Apaha are the 7 underworlds. So Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Talatala, Mahatala, and Patala. So it's very interesting. Understand that these 14 worlds, or the description of these 14 worlds, 7 is Bhuloka or earth, where we are. Above us are 7 worlds that represent higher and higher levels of celestial existence. And below us are 7 worlds that represents a worse form of existence than we have on this current earth. And in later texts, this maps the journey of the soul depending upon the acts that have been performed on earth. So let me just take a slight detour and explain to you that, according to all of the Upanishads, every soul, every one of us, is born with some karma. And the purpose of human existence is for you to reduce this karmic baggage or this karmic load. So karma is nothing more than the sum total of impressions that carry a heavy emotional or deep impressions in this life. Anything that leaves a deep impression of you is like a karmic trace. That continues even beyond death as part of that consciousness. It is reborn, and it is reborn in such a way, and you're presented with situations in this life, and which, if you deal with it, allows you to erase that karma. And there are lots of things that erase that karma. Good actions, working with a pure heart and not expecting anything in return. So all of our religious texts are all about how to reduce that karma. The other thing to note in this description of worlds, earth is the only world. Even the gods aspire to be born on earth because it is only in this bodily form that you can actually change your karma. You can actually change the future. What you have come with is a result of whatever, inherited karmas over several lifetimes. Some part of that karma has been activated in this life, and you'll see it playing out. And how you react to situations in this life determines what karma you drop and maybe some more that you accumulate, which then determines your next birth. And positive karmas, good karma that, raises your energy will take you to one of those 7 layers above. Or you go down to one of the 7 layers below till you have outlived whatever might have been, associated with that karma, and then you come back to earth. Okay? Now, the highest, beyond all this, the Upanishads will teach you is, our goal in life is not to go to one of these. These are way stations. Our ultimate goal is moksha. Moksha is, there is no rebirth. You have obliterated all your karma. There is no karmic trace that creates that restlessness that causes you to be born. Moksha, or oneness with that universal consciousness, that is the ultimate reality. So a little bit more of a detour than we would normally go to, but for those of you, since some of you are coming in new, I wanted to establish this context. All right, let's move on. Val has this beautiful slide here. You remember I mentioned that top is water, bottom is water. I mean, I didn't say it. Aitareya Upanishad did. Look at the parallels between a baby that takes birth and the birth of the universe, a human baby. So the macrocosm of the universe and the microcosm of human birth, look at these features. Primal waters of the universe is the amniotic fluid in the womb. The physical realm of the earth, the center, is the fetus. The horizon, what holds it, the boundaries, is the amniotic sac. And the cosmic soul of the Atman, the very source of existence, is enervated in the fetus through the mother's life force. Look at the beauty of it. And all through in the Upanishads, we keep hearing that the microcosm is nothing more. It is the same blueprint. The way in which life unfolds is the same way in which the universe was created. There are parallels at every level. All right? Okay, that is the beauty of creation. And as always, Ashokan has given us this very, very helpful summary. Atmava idameka evagra asit. The self alone existed in the beginning. The philosophical role is it establishes absolute non-duality. There is nothing else, nothing beyond consciousness. Flow stage is of pure being. Na anya kinchana mishat. Nothing else whatsoever functioned. There was nothing. So it denies any second reality, absolute exclusivity. Sa ikshata. He willed or saw first emergence of conscious intention or an awakening of the will. Lokanu srija iti. Let me create the worlds. Now there's a transition from potential energy to created energy. This is the birth of the creative impulse. Let's look at the second verse. Sa imam lokan asrijata. He created these worlds. First manifest act of creation. Creation starts. Ambaha, waters above, highest plane. Marichihi, intermediate plane. Energy, subtle realm. Maraha, realm of depth and experience, the gross plane. Apaha, the foundational latent layer or the base plane. So the philosophical progression from the first to the second verse, absolute reality, only consciousness exists. Atma eka eva. Negation, no second entity. Na anyat kinchana. First movement, ikshata, intent. Lokan srija. I want to create. Manifestation, asrijata, he created. Structuring, amba, marichi, mara, apaha. All right? So let's go to the third verse and we'll stop with that for today. What happens once he willed and he created these worlds? Sa ikshata imenu lokaha. Lokapala nu srija iti. Sa adbhyasam udritya eva purusham amurchayat. Saha ikshata, he thought. Ime, these, no, indeed, lokaha, the worlds. Lokapalan, the guardians of these worlds. These worlds need guardians. No, srija, let me create. Iti das saha he, adbhaya, from these waters, eva, alone. Purusham, the cosmic being of Purusha, the first creation. Samudritya, having taken it out of these waters, amurchayat, he shaped it. So the first creation was shaped from water. So he, Brahman, reflected, here now are the worlds just created. Let me now create the Lokapalas, the protectors of these worlds. So he took a lump of the waters and gave it a human form. Now we have been introduced. Here it is called Purusham, Purusha. You remember Purusha from Sankhya? We've been introduced to it in Vedanta as Hiranyagarbha. The first manifest creation is Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic or the golden womb. From that, everything else arises. So two-step process. The recognition of need. The self observes the newly created world and says, oh, we need guardians for these. We need conscious forces to govern these, right? It's not just chaos. Let's govern these worlds. And then the formation of Purusha. From the waters, the subtle material of the universe, the self extracts a lump of consciousness gives it a human-like form known as a cosmic person or Purusha. All right. In the next few verses, this should start giving you an idea of how this Upanishad tells us the story of creation. So let's go back to the questions because I'm going to open this up to our conversation, your observations, what struck you. What struck you about the story of sage Mahidasa? As Val explained, for the other Upanishads, we don't know who wrote them, right? The speculation. Here, it's very clearly identified. And this is from the Rig, one of the oldest Vedas. What is your understanding of the universe starting with an intention? What does that say about the Atman? Why do you think the Upanishad uses water to describe both the highest celestial realm and the foundation of the physical world? And then this is a question, if you know the answer, we'd love to hear it. If not, just go and Google it. Use one of these AI tools and say what you've just heard in this very brief, just the first 3 verses of the Aitareya Upanishad, what it starts talking about creation, how does it compare to other religious texts? Right? So this is your homework for next week. With that, let me stop recording and I'll open it up to conversation or questions or clarifications.